Today I'm going to walk through the minimum housing standards. These are the standards that is applicable to all Queensland rental properties. This is residential, by the way, not commercial. I'm only talking about residential. And if your tenant is living at the property, if you have a tenant at the property, whether it's a periodic or a general tenancy agreement, this applies. So let's look at what actually are minimum housing standards. There's quite a few here. The first one, they must be weatherproof and structurally sound, which means rain will not enter the property through windows or the roof when it rains, and it's not going to fall over or there's severe damage. Even termite damage is applicable if that is affecting, for example, the staircase structure and it's not structurally sound, then your property does not meet minimum housing standards. It must be in good repair. This is, for example, light switches. They can over time deteriorate, and if you use them and they're broken, they will potentially zap people as well. They need to have functioning locks or latches on all external doors that can be reached without a ladder. That does mean, yes, if you have a double-story house and one of the windows upstairs does not have a lock, that is fine. But any doors and windows that can be reached without a ladder, which means even your screen door, even your front wooden door, they need to have functioning locks. The property must be free from vermin and mold. Now, if the tenant has neglected to clean mold and properly ventilate the property, then that is a tenant's obligation to resolve. But for example, if there is a roof leak and mold has spread throughout, then that is 100% a breach of minimum housing standards. Or if there's severe rat infestation or cockroach infestation that's well below and not caused by the tenant being dirty or unclean, then that is, again, a minimum housing standard that has been breached. Every single window which the tenant can reasonably respect needs to be covered. Now, what that means is this only applies to bedrooms or other areas such as bathrooms that you need to make sure the tenant has privacy. It can also apply if you have a lounge room backing onto the road. You want to make sure that is covered, as anybody walking past will walk through and see the tenant having dinner, which nobody really wants. If your windows are frosted, if we scroll down a little bit here, if they're frosted or tinted, that classifies as window coverings because a person cannot actually see through and invade the tenant's privacy. So that is completely fine. You want to make sure the property has adequate plumbing and drainage. Means all the drains are not clogged and draining effectively. There is hot and cold water, not lukewarm water. There is always hot and cold water, and it is suitable for drinking. I have had properties that for some reason there's black specks in all the water when the kitchen tap is turned on. So we had to get that fixed ASAP because the tenant can't technically even drink water from the property. You want to make sure in the bathroom areas that there are flushable toilets and you need to do a sewer, septic tank or other waste disposal system. Make sure it isn't going out to the backyard and it's going to the required place. You want to make sure the property has a functioning cooktop. That is, if a kitchen is provided. What it does not require is for an oven to be functioning, but if there was an oven on entry, then you need to make sure that it is still working. If you didn't have an oven in the first place, it was just a cooktop, then that's completely fine. You don't need to have an oven at the property, but there must be a cooktop. But if you do have an oven and it is broken, it needs to be fixed. Because the tenant was paying originally $600 per week, say for example, for a property with a working oven. Last one, you need to make sure that the property includes the necessary fixtures for a functional laundry, such as tap fixtures. You don't have to provide a washing machine or dryer. That is optional, which I would personally recommend to not supply. It's one less cost you have to worry about. But if you do supply it and it does break, it does force you to replace it when it does break, because it will break. And white goods nowadays are just turning into throwaway consumables. Whose responsibility is it around minimum housing standards? It is mine, the property manager's, and also yours as the owner responsibility to ensure that the property meets minimum housing standards at the start of the tenancy. So when the tenant moves in, you need to make sure every single box is ticked. And things happen during the tenancy. For example, the cooktop can stop functioning and you need it replaced. And tenants, in most circumstances, are understanding of this, especially with the trade shortage that we have in Emerald. They understand we can't get somebody out there tomorrow to fix that. But as long as they know that somebody is going to attend on this date and make sure that they do attend on that date, then that's completely fine. And again, that is in a timely manner. We can't expect everything to be fixed tomorrow if they only reported it this evening. It's simply not possible. Now, what happens if a property does not meet minimum housing standards? It is classed as an emergency repair and it needs to be fixed as soon as possible. If there's a few issues that have all gone wrong at once, the tenant may want to get one fixed earlier than the other. For example, if a cooktop is not working anymore and the hot water system is not working, they probably want the hot water prior to the cooktop. The thing that most people don't really understand is if the tenant moves in and it does not meet minimum housing standards, they can move out without any costs or any obligations. Now, most people, yes, in the current circumstances, don't want to move out as soon as they moved in, but times will change, and if property managers or owners are constantly moving tenants into poor quality properties, tenants will end up saying, get lost, and I'm going somewhere else. There's a property down the road that's the same price and meets minimum housing standards and has a working cooktop. So these things are essential. When you are buying a property, make sure all these boxes are ticked. If these boxes are ticked, it means that you can lease the property legally. What tenants can also do is report and advertise rental property that does not appear to meet minimum housing standards, and anonymously. So if they've inspected your property, and keep in mind that as a property manager, we are obliged to let the tenant know, or applicants know, if there is anything wrong with the property. That's what we do. And I'm not a fan of trying to sidestep any questions on if there's a roof leak. And if there is a roof leak and you as the owner is not wanting it to be fixed and a tenant moves in despite being warned by the property manager, then there's going to be a major issue, an upset tenant, and it's going to be a bit of a difficult situation. But we don't want that at all. So what we really want to make sure is that each of these boxes are ticked whenever a tenant moves in. Keep in mind, whenever you have a maintenance request come through, that these things are classified as urgent. The way that I work, if there is a urgent repair that needs to be done, we get it sorted. But of course, we keep the investor updated at every single step, but we get it sorted, because if we leave it a day waiting for a owner to reply, first, it's another decision they have to make, and secondly, they may not be able to reply within the required time frame, which then means we have an upset tenant on our hands.